Please rise for the Chairman of Thanet District Council.
Good evening, councillors and officers of the council and members of the press and public. I welcome you to this meeting of the council. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the office via the stairs, either through the security doors to my right or opposite the lifts in the foyer. Please do not use the lift. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. I would advise that if filming takes place, anybody in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured. I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly in their children present. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? Any filming or recording will not be permitted for items of business where exempt or confidential information is considered, following exclusion of the press and public from the meeting. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillors Crittenden, Warrow, Smith, Scott and Manners. Is there any other apologies for absence?
Chair, Councillor Nichols.
Councillor Bertie Braidwood.
Okay.
Did he hear that or not?
Councillor Curran.
And apologies from Councillor Ara.
Any more? No? Councillor Manners, yeah. Right, agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. I would like to draw your attention to some amendments that I'd like to move as detailed in the councillors' notes before you. Subject to the amendments mentioned above, I move that the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 22nd of February 2024 be approved and signed as a correct record. Would Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Yep. Do councillors agree? Right. Thank you. Agenda item 3, announcements. I have not been informed of any announcements. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Agenda item 5, petitions. The result of one petition is being reported to council in accordance with the council's petition protocol. Agenda item 6A, response to petition regarding removal of vehicles and unattached trailers from Lyle Court and West Court, Searchington. The council response to the petition is outlined in the report before councillors. Do any councillors have any comments? Right, Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to Mrs Knight for bringing this petition forward. Both Councillor Pugh and I are aware of this situation that's been happening, and we've been working with Peace England to see what we can do to move these vehicles on to make sure that the road is clear again. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. Agenda item 6, questions from the press and public. There have been 2 questions received from the press and public in accordance with Council Procedure Rule number 13. Please note that only one questioner and respondent are permitted to speak on the question. Could the questionnaire please only state the name of the Cabinet member to whom their question is to be put and read out exactly the wording of the question they have submitted to Council. Agenda item 6A, question number 1 from a member of the public regarding redevelopment of agricultural land and farmland. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Fisher to the meeting. Could you please make your way to the microphone?
Good evening. This is to Councillor Whitehead. On March the 23rd last year, before the Thanet Council elections, you actively posted on the Ellen for Thanet Facebook site that you were against development of agricultural land and farmland. What has changed and why? You're now single-mindedly pursuing farming site and closing off any suggestion from the public. It seems inconsistent, do you not think?
I call upon Councillor Whitehead to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Fisher. Considering the amount of deliberate disinformation disseminated on this point, it is very important to establish the accuracy of your question, as well as giving a clear and accurate response. Firstly, your statement regarding agricultural land and the National Planning Policy Framework submission is incorrect. To quote directly and accurately from that public submission, what was said was the following: the Labour Group speak for central protection of agricultural land, as that is the only way to adequately protect it. Over the past 5 years, I have put a significant amount of effort into understanding our planning system, the methodology of local plans, and the drivers behind centrally proposed housing figures. Given my understanding of how difficult it is for councils to both change given housing numbers and protect agricultural land without central protection via a register, which was my suggestion within the NPPF consultation, suggesting that I or we as a council could directly protect all agricultural land is something that never happened. In fact, the opposite happened. I recognise that we could not protect it in relation to central demands, and so specifically asked for central protection for it. It is not at all difficult to confirm my stance through repeated work within local online development discussion groups on social media, as I have been incredibly and repeatedly clear about the fact that to protect agricultural land, we need a change in central policy. We have been researching long enough to understand that significant change in central approach and legislation is necessary to protect agricultural land, and that is what was asked for in the NPPF submission. Agricultural land cannot be considered as a whole. It is graded land of differing fertility, output and value in terms of food production. As such, high-grade agricultural land needs to be protected by a central register, as without that, councils are forced to use it due to imposed housing numbers and development requirements that we are held to by central government. We are very aware that councils are unable to protect agricultural land without significant changes in central policy and without a change in central focus. We would not promise something that we know we cannot do, and we didn't. The evidence for that is available in our public NPPF submission and on my Helen for Thanet Facebook page. You are very welcome to check for accuracy. Others may choose, and in fact have chosen, to misrepresent me, hence this question. My words, however, will give you the reality of what was discussed and requested from central government. Absolutely nothing has changed within my position. I still believe that agricultural land requires protection on a central register, have asked central government to make that central register, and will continue to do so. As an administration, we also wrote to the Secretary of State on the 11th of September 2023 to ask them to make direct decisions on planning applications for agricultural land in order to protect decisions from appeal. Our request was turned down by central government as they informed us that the issue of the protection of agricultural land was not an issue of, and I quote, national significance. It is also incorrect to say that I am single-mindedly pursuing anything. In fact, the only part of the proposal that you reference that sits with me is the direct housing aspect. I do not hold the planning or estates portfolio, which is what the majority of this proposal links to, and have no role in those decisions other than in consideration as part of Cabinet. Since 2019, and across several administrations and cross-party committees, over 14 sites have been considered for suitability. This is not a new or a singular process. The only thing that differs is that I have been open and very willing to communicate about the entirety of a process that should have been discussed more and publicly before this point. The decision to allocate any land for development as part of the local plan is also not a matter for me as Cabinet Member for Housing, nor a matter for the Cabinet, but would be determined by full council and subsequently by the Planning Inspectorate, following public examination. This process ensures that suggestions from the public are comprehensively considered. This evening, in the interest of accuracy and transparency, I am choosing to answer your question, which you specifically directed to me. However, previous to this, you have tried to find out where I live, told other residents where you think I live on public forums, and have in the course of this posted the home address of a completely unrelated woman on public forums, potentially allowing her to be targeted based on a complete inaccuracy. I fully expect that in choosing to answer your question, even after all of the above behaviour and more, that this previous online conduct will not be repeated, so that I will be able to continue useful democratic discussion within this chamber with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Agenda item 6B, question number 2, a member of the public regarding potential traveller sites. Mr. Lane was unable to attend the meeting. He will be responded in writing. Agenda item 7, questions from councillors. 11 questions have been received from councillors. Please note the time allowed for consideration of questions from councillors shall not exceed 30 minutes. I've asked councillors to be succulent as possible, please. So, agenda item 7A, question number 1 from councillor regarding Jackie Bakers. I call on councillor Scobie.
Thank you, Chair. This is to Councillor Alban. Would the Cabinet Member please provide an update on planned improvements at Jackie Bakers and the proposed master plan at the site? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I'll call on Councillor Alban to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Scobie. I'll be very quick then, so we get through this. Cabinet considered a report about Jackie Bakers at this meeting on the 14th of December 2023. The report recommended the demolition of the existing pavilion and the installation of temporary porta-cabin style changing facilities. Over the past 3 months, officers have undertaken the design work required to submit a planning application for the installation of the temporary porta-cabin style changing facilities. In addition, officers also developed the tender documents required for both the demolition work and the new facility installation. The planning application will be submitted in early April, with the tender advertised while the planning application is being considered. The report also included a draft master plan for future improvements of the facilities at Jackie Baker's and recommended that the council consult with the community about this before adopting the proposal. The report also advised that the proposals in the draft master plan were, at that stage, unfunded. The adoption of the master plan could, however, provide an opportunity to bid for further external funding if and when opportunities arise, and to work collaboratively, even that as well, with local national partners to deliver a long-term ambitious vision for the site. Since that time, the Council has agreed a new budget for the financial year 24-25, including a one-off sum of £50,000 to be drawn from reserves to support sports development in the district. In addition, recent conversations with the Kent Football Association have been positive about funding that could become available via them to increase the work we do with the local communities and their access to sport and facilities. This includes potential support for pitch improvements at Jackie Baker's for the 24-25 football season. Plans are being developed around the use of the £50,000 funding for sports development, which will provide an opportunity to progress with the public consultation about Jackie Baker's. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, just a quick one, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Alban, for that answer. One of the things I think would be quite helpful moving forward, and you've been very generous with time with residents, I wonder if we could get a regular, maybe every couple of months meeting with officers and the newly formed Jackie Baker's Community Action Group, just to keep track of progress, because I think one of the things is you're outlining stuff that's long term and people are looking for stuff short term, and I think it's good to keep in communication with people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie, do you want to respond?
I do, Chair, yes. I'm totally in agreement with that, and it will be with the head of service.
Moving on, agenda item 7B, question number 2 from the Councillor regarding enforcement officers and beaches. I called upon Councillor Munns.
Thank you, Chair. And my question's for Steve Alban. Last year, we learned, in answer to my question to Council, that no fixed penalty notices were issued under the Council's PSPO, only interventions. Despite TDC's officers' assurances to me and fellow councillors, we did not deploy warranted officers. This season, how many enforcement officers will be patrolling Thanet beaches? And crucially, will they be warranted to issue penalty notices? And will senior TDC officers direct them to do so? TDC has a duty of care to visitors. Last year on Botany Bay Beach, a child suffered serious burns from a buried disposable barbecue. Issuing fines and publicising the fact would help deter breaches of the PSPO and protect visitors. Also, what level of operational cooperation will TDC enforcement officers have with local police? Please outline what, if any, formal process exists between senior TDC officers and Thanet Police to ensure cooperation and operation effectiveness, and how is this monitored?
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Alban to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Munns, for your question. Last year, the Council employed a team of new... excuse me. Oh, hello, something's gone. Something's gone, belly up. Sorry about that. Press the wrong button. Story of my life. Last year, the Council employed a team of new coastal enforcement officers who needed to undertake training in order to exercise their delegated authority to enforce. This training was completed in June, and from July onwards, they could enforce. Records are made of interactions between our coastal enforcement officers and beach users. These records indicate that over 500 breaches were prevented last year due to educational intervention. Community protection warnings were also issued when required. This year, we will employ three full-time permanent coastal enforcement officers. The level of resource will be supplemented over the summer season with a further 4 part-time seasonal coastal enforcement officers to maximise coverage during busy periods. New coastal enforcement officers will be trained in May. Coastal enforcement officers will be directed to issue fixed penalty notices where appropriate. Coastal enforcement officers will, however, continue to take a balanced and proportionate approach to its work with the focus of interaction with members of the public and prevention of behaviour which would otherwise warrant the issuing of a fixed penalty notice. The coastal enforcement team is part of an ongoing project with the local police teams, working in close partnership with each other. The coastal enforcement team will share daily updates and meet weekly with the local police team to share logs, reports and information to aid partnership working. It is, of course, unacceptable when anyone is hurt on our beaches due to irresponsible behaviour of minority of people, especially in relation to what you said concerning the barbecue. The PSPO specifically references bonfires, disposable barbecues, which are not allowed on our beaches at any time. The Council's website provides guidance for the safe use of the removal of barbecues after 6 p.m. The guidance will be promoted and highlighted via social media ahead of during the 2024 season. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Have you a supplementary?
Yes, I just want to follow up on the point from May that the enforcement officers will be employed. Will they be warranted from May, or will they have to go through training to be warranted? And thank you for your answer, Steve.
Chair. Thank you. They will be trained. Whether they'll be warranted, whether they have a warrant, I do not know. If there is, I don't think we've got. You asked me that, right?
It's not the correct term, warranted, but they will be trained in May.
Yeah. Evidently, I'm advised, warranted is not the correct. They're not police, so they don't carry a warrant card. But they do have. They can issue fixed penalty notices.
Right, thank you. Item agenda 7C, question number 3 from the councillor regarding unstable composting material. I call upon Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chairman. This question is for Councillor Orban. Since my question put to the last council meeting, I've received many written and verbal complaints regarding the huge waste of public money spent on removing green waste at the Dane Park depot. I have since discovered that officers were concerned about this issue 3 years ago, but were ignored. A local farmer estimated that the cost of disposing of 2,200 tonnes of usable compostable material could have cost the council £30,000, not £275,000. My question is, are the council considering managing this waste to produce a profitable income stream? Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Albon to respond.
Thank you, Chair. At least I'm getting exercise tonight. I think firstly, before I sort of go into the full answer on this, Councillor Rogers, and I thank you for your question. Obviously, we've discussed this both at Cabinet and at the last council meeting, of which you had a question on it. The facts of the matter are that if we hadn't, first thing, you're a nice farmer man. He would obviously, he didn't know what was in that. We didn't know what was in that pile of compost, and I use that in inverted commas, which will become clear when I read the final, when I read the full answer out. So how he could actually estimate it would cost £30,000 when he didn't know what was in it is beyond me. So for that, so just for that, so let me give you the full answer. The accumulated waste at Dane Park Depot was mixed waste, which included soil, green waste, wood and metal. For this reason, it could not be removed as green waste only. The waste removal was carried out to ensure compliance with Environment Agency requirements and to protect the local environment. When this issue was brought to the attention of the Council's corporate management team by the head of Coastal and Public Realm in November 2023, it was progressed with urgency as described in the report at Cabinet on the 25th of July 2024, January 2024, we're not there yet. It makes sense that some officers may have been aware of the accumulation of the waste earlier than this, but the issue was not brought to the attention of the corporate management team until later part of 2023. Moving forward, the exemptions the Council have put in place allow for materials including wood, metal, plastic, hardcore and green waste to be separated into material types with different storage areas and stored at the depot. The Council is aware of the value of recycling waste from a moral, ethical and legislative obligations. The Council's grass cuttings are grass cycled and left to provide a natural fertiliser to grassed areas. Materials will be reused where they can, such as wood chips being used for paths and borders. Materials that cannot be reused by the service are recycled wherever possible, and segregation ensures this is maximised. The Council is looking at the avenue open to it to ensure waste is recycled in the most cost-effective, legal and ethical way possible. The last thing I would say, Councillor Rogers, on this is that if we hadn't have acted when we did to remove this as soon as possible, as soon as I was notified of it, I was part of this decision to say we need to clear this ASAP. The reason is that if the Environment Agency could prosecute the Council, we would have had a heavy fine and would still have cost us the same amount of money to remove it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Orban. Following up on that, will the Council look at suitable sites for a green waste facility, investigate the costs of the site and equipment, and will officers involve portfolio holders and members in these decisions? Thank you.
Councillor Orban.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Rogers. I can't advise you, I can't say yes to that at the moment. I think that's something I'm more than happy to take away and to discuss with the director and the head of service on that. And yeah, and I think the issue of this matter when it arose is something that all members should be advised of. We should know stuff like that. So yeah, I'm quite happy to take that away and have a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 7D, question number 4 from Councillor regarding the Winter Gardens. I call on Councillor Ratt.
I'll give you a break, Steve. Thank you, Chair. This is for Councillor Duckworth. Can we please have an update on the Winter Gardens? How many expressions of interest have there been? Are any of these expressions being taken forward to further discussions? And if so, do we have any target dates?
Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question, Councillor Rattigan. A detailed update on the Margate Regeneration Programme was considered by Cabinet at its meeting on 29th of February 2024 and subsequently by the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. A further report about the programme was considered by Cabinet on 14th of March 2024 when it was agreed that £4 million of the Margate Town Deal funding would be allocated to the Winter Gardens project. The report provided an update on the marketing campaign and expressions of interest. In particular, the report stated that the deadline for expressions of interest, EOI, was on the 22nd of February 2024. By the deadline, there was only one EOI. That at this stage had limited information about the finances for the refurbishment of the building, but identified that there would be a need to work closely with the Council to help deal with the potential funding gap. A second expression of interest has subsequently been received, also recognising the funding gap in the project linked to its heritage deficit. The agents, Colliers, also provided further information on other interested parties that had engaged with the marketing process but not submitted an EOI. A financial gap was a recurring theme through their feedback about the Winter Gardens. Now that the Council has agreed to allocate £4 million of town deal funding to the project, we will be proceeding with stage 2 of the marketing campaign and will be seeking more detailed submissions in relation to the proposed refurbishment of the building and the operational arrangements for the venue. As part of stage 2, the data room, which is a digital room with information in it, will be updated with information about the £4 million funding, and further open days will be arranged. We expect the stage 2 process to start in April and be completed during May 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. Councillor Rath.
Lovely, thank you very much for that update. I think my sort of supplement you pretty much answered. Obviously, given the new funding, that obviously perhaps people that before wouldn't look at it as quite attractive. Would just say was you going to obviously were they going to put that back out for a re-tender? But it sounds like they're already going to do that. So thank you very much.
Councillor Duckworth, do you want to respond?
No, I think that's all right. You've got everything you need. Thank you.
So any from the councillor regarding collaboration between councils and town and parish councils. I call upon Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Councillor Everett. Just a small bit of context first, if I may, Chair. Last year, the Overview and Scrutiny completed a fantastic review chaired by your very own Councillor Curry on the subject of how TDC collaborates or could collaborate more with town and parish councils. The review went through Cabinet and was greatly received by yourself and your fellow Cabinet members, and you yourself have said that you'd like to see more connection with town and parish councils and appreciated the fantastic work that they do. So my question is, following Cabinet's full agreement to the recommendations in the review, which is here, from Overview and Scrutiny on collaboration between TDC and town and parish councils, can Councillor Everett confirm when the first full parish forum will take place?
I call upon Councillor Everett to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fellows, for your question. And the answer is I can. Council officers are currently preparing terms of reference for a new parish forum and will be in a position to contact town and parish councils during April with a view to agreeing a date for an initial meeting in May. There were 8 recommendations in total from the review, all of which Cabinet agreed last autumn, and I believe that one of the roles of the new forum should be to oversee and monitor their implementation. But of course that's something for the forum to agree. I do think that this is a cultural issue about how the council works with the town and parish councils. I think we've seen some good progress on that in the last year, certainly with the new Broadstairs Town Council and already with the Ramsgate Town Council, and I'm keen to see that that rolls out right across the island to all the parish councils. So I look forward to the first meeting of the parish forum, and I'm sure it's going to be a productive exercise. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Fellows, you've got supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that answer, Councillor Everett, and I'm sure everyone here agrees that our town and parish councils are great powerhouses of local representation with a wealth of knowledge and experience as well as enthusiasm that this council should be tapping into. I digress, I apologise. Right, my follow-up. Overview and Scrutiny, personally, I've previously been involved in 2 excellent reviews, including one that I've just mentioned, that have made some great recommendations in which we always made sure that there would be none or negligible cost to this council, but can and will always deliver some positive outcomes. Both reviews were greatly received and agreed by cabinets and applauded by anyone who has read them, but as I say, there's been very little action. We're in the throes of completing an equally great review, chaired by your very own Councillor Britcher, on the impacts of tourism in Thanet, which we'll be sending to Cabinet in the next few weeks. Can Councillor Everett confirm to me that he will look closely at all these reviews and start to see the benefits that these can bring to the council? Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Everett to respond.
Well, I'm sure that's going to be a useful piece of work, but I haven't seen it yet, so it would probably be a bit premature for me to react to it. But certainly, I think that there's a lot of valuable work that can be done by scrutiny subgroups, and I'll be looking at anything which is sent to Cabinet very carefully, and I hope to take the recommendations forward if we agree with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Agenda item 7F, question number 6 from Councillor regarding littering. I call upon Councillor Pam.
Councillor Album. Don't get too comfortable. So Labour promised to clean the streets, but I'm still seeing litter everywhere. Can you please confirm how many fines have been issued for littering in the past 12 months?
Call upon Councillor Alban to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question, Councillor Banbridge. In order to continue to tackle the problem of litter on our streets in 24-25, the 24-25 budget includes a growth item enabling the recruitment of 6 permanent street cleansing operatives. This will complement the core services including the electric walk-behind sweepers deployed in Margate, Broadstairs, Ramsgate and Cliftonville. The Council is also in the process of purchasing 2 large 7.5-tonne mechanical sweepers, which will double the current large sweeper provision. In recent years, the Environmental Education Officer has led some successful campaigns and interventions to educate people on the impacts of littering. This post is currently vacant, but recruitment is being undertaken. Our enforcement teams investigated 2,881 fly tipping complaints in 2022 and issued 82 penalty notices. The team works hard to tackle the waste issues. I think we all know, that was the official answer, but for me off the top of my head, which is not a lot there normally, it's difficult. You know, people are lazy, people throw things everywhere, they don't use the bins, and to keep up with that work is a multi-faceted task. But we are trying as hard as we can to ensure the streets are clean, and unfortunately we don't live in a place which doesn't have any litter, and I don't think there's anywhere in the country that doesn't have any litter. So we will try as hard as we can. Thank you, Councillor Bainbridge.
Councillor Bainbridge, have you got a supplementary?
Yes, I've got a quick supplementary. Actually, when I was walking through Cecil Square, I thought it looked quite tidy tonight and clean, and I thought perhaps you'd been out there, or got everyone out there quickly beforehand, before the full council. I was just wondering if there's anything more we can do as a council to support and encourage local litter picking groups. I note that there are links to litter picking groups on the council website, but could we possibly have an easy to find calendar letting people know where the litter picks are taking place each month?
Councillor Alban, you respond?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for that, Councillor Banbridge. Well, as you may probably know, that starting this week is the Great Litter campaign to tidy the island up, and fellow councillor sitting over there, Councillor Austin in Ramsgate, has organised quite a lot of the litter picking, and they've been out every day over the last week or so as fellow councillors, and I think we need to give our volunteers and our residents a great big hand of applause and a big thank you for the work that they do, because we can't do it, because we haven't got the resources to. But I hope that we can, I'll certainly talk with the officers to see whether we can, when any of these things are happening, that we can get them advertised, and the more people that can come out, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 7G, question number 7 from a councillor regarding Manston Airport. I call upon Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for Councillor Everett. Can the leader provide an update to councillors on any meetings he has had with River Oak strategic partners in relation to the reopening of Manston Airport?
Call upon Councillor Everett to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Members be aware, I met with Tony Freudman from RSP on the 20th of December 2023, and RSP provided an update. A note of that meeting was subsequently provided to all councillors. I also attended a site visit at the invitation of RSP on the 16th of December 2023, along with other Labour councillors and a council officer, to talk about RSP's plans. It was agreed on the 20th of December that Mr Freudman would attend a members' briefing in the late spring or summer when the situation had moved on. There remain a large number of detailed matters that are still to be determined in relation to the necessary development of the airport. Mr Freudman has submitted a document to the Council listing all of the matters that are still to be determined in accordance with the Development Control Order issued by the Government, and officers have already provided some feedback on these issues, so there is some work going on. However, as you will be aware, the courts are still working through the legal process in relation to the DCO. The most recent judicial review application was initially refused. However, the Court of Appeal has now granted permission to appeal on the sole ground of need, and we await the outcome of that appeal.
Right, Councillor Pugh, you've got supplementary?
I do, Chair. I thank the leader for his response, and it's encouraging to hear that Tony Freudman and the River Oak team will be in to brief members soon. My supplementary question is that the leader has stated publicly recently that he doesn't think the plan to reopen the airport is viable, which is incredibly disappointing. So my question is does the leader feel that it's appropriate to try and stifle investment coming into the Isle, coming into the district, that has the potential to create thousands of jobs for an area, in an area where we definitely need them?
Call upon Councillor Everett to respond.
I'll tell you what I think is important, and that is to be honest with our residents about what we think. I was asked a question in an interview about what my position is, and I've been clear with the Council that this administration will respond constructively and positively to the situation that is faced with. And if the DCO is eventually granted, as we've already demonstrated in our meetings with Mr Freudman, we will engage properly and we will move matters forward. What I can't do is pretend to believe in fairy stories. And I'm afraid that there is a great body of evidence which says that the airport is not viable. There have been a number of reports that have said that. Clearly the owners and the investors, if they're forthcoming, don't believe that. I respect that. I don't present myself as an aviation expert, but I have to be honest with the people of Thanet and with this council. My personal view is that the airport will not prove to be viable, and I don't think it will happen. But if it does and it creates thousands of jobs, I will welcome the jobs that it brings. Thank you.
Agenda item 7H, question number 8 from the Councillor regarding parking enforcement officers. I called upon Councillor Thanet.
Keen. No. Thank you. Can you confirm how many parking enforcement officers are currently employed by the council?
Call upon Councillor Keane to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Towning. There are 11 full-time equivalent civil enforcement officer posts in the current establishment, with 3 posts currently filled. However, we have 4 CVs submitted, which will be processed in the coming weeks, and an ongoing recruitment open with a local agency. It is common knowledge that these roles are extremely difficult to recruit to, and this is a problem faced by local authorities across the country, with a number of Kent authorities currently running recruitment campaigns. We have an ongoing recruitment campaign and have included a market supplement to encourage applicants. We have recruited a number of officers over the last 6 months since the last update regarding this situation. However, there remains a high level of staff turnover in this area.
Do you call upon Councillor Town? Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. I do indeed. It's rather difficult for people to apply for a job if it's not advertised or promoted by the employment agency. It doesn't even appear on their website, nor does it appear on Thanet District Council's website, which you are now aware of. You weren't previously aware of that, from what I understand. Can you tell us what your plan is now to move this forward and make sure that these jobs are properly advertised and properly marketed? And confirm how many you will have by the summer for parking, for parking enforcement. And as you didn't have a previous plan, what is your plan going forward? Thank you.
Call upon Councillor Keane to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Towning. Yes, it's true that we didn't realise that the jobs weren't advertised at the time, but when I found out, we immediately took action, contacted HRGO, the employment agency, and they were able to tell us that because they'd sent over the CVs, they had removed the advert, so of course we got it put straight back up again. And it's also going to be on the TDC website from the beginning of April. So that issue has been resolved. However, there's still the difficulty in recruiting to these posts, and it is a countrywide and a county-wide issue. I checked online, and every other area in Kent has also got adverts for these posts. It's a difficult job to recruit to because it's a difficult job to do. So what we're going to do is look at how we recruit, how we support, and what we can do to attract and retain more staff. I cannot give you an answer as to how many we will have by the summer because that's an unknown. What I can say is we are looking at this situation very carefully and we'll do all we can to increase the complement to the full number. Thank you.
Thank you. It was at this point we was going to reach the cut-off, but we've got some spare time, so we're going to move on. I'd like to hear Councillor Davies. So,
thank you, Chair. I thank you.
You can practice. Yeah. So, question number 9 from Councillor regarding gypsy and caravan travelling sites. So, call upon Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry, Councillor Davis. One of us has got to talk, right? I welcome the forthcoming public consultation on the provision of a site and facilities for the gypsy and traveller community. This is the right thing to do for some of the most vulnerable members of our community. However, at January's overview and scrutiny panel and subsequent cabinet meeting, the history of the decision-making process for choosing this site was unclear. Can the leader confirm, sorry, this is a question to Councillor Everett, I do apologise. Can the leader confirm whether any work was done to explore the suitability of land at Shottendane Road for use as a potential gypsy and traveller site between June 2021 and May 2023? Whether officers and cabinet members visited the site, and if so, when? And whether the site was then discounted for such use or whether it was considered thereafter as a viable option. Thank you.
Thank you. I called upon Councillor Everett to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bright, for your question. So to recap, work to find a suitable site began in 2019 when a cross-party subgroup of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel considered 5 possible site options. In July 2020, Cabinet considered a list of 14 different sites in the district, each of which was scored by officers according to 10 different criteria. Shottendane Road was rated the most suitable against these criteria. This information is publicly available on the Council website and always has been. It should be noted that the former Ramsgate Hoverport was included in this process and not deemed a viable location. It was ranked 5th out of 5 sites considered by the cross-party subgroup of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel and 14th out of 14 in the Officer Report to Cabinet in July 2020. It was therefore taken out of consideration. This was on the basis of it being an obvious flood risk, located next to a nationally protected area of high environmental sensitivity, and the fact that it consists of hard standing, unsuitable for children's play. It also offers limited access to services. Following a further report to Cabinet in September 2020, it was decided to bring the matter forward as part of the planned review of the Thanet local plan, which has statutory consultation processes, is subject to government inspection, and has the advantage of considering future land use across the district in the round. A subsequent public call for sites in 2021 as part of the local plan review process produced no submissions from landowners for sites for the gypsy and traveller community. However, the local plan review has also been delayed, first by uncertainty around the future of Maidstone Airport and then by government changes to national planning policy. I am informed that work continued between 2021 and 2023 under the previous administration, and that the Conservative Cabinet visited a number of sites on the 23rd of May 2022, including both the land at Shottendane Road and a site off of Highfield Road. The Conservative Cabinet subsequently removed the land at Highfield Road from consideration when it took a formal decision on the 2nd of March 2023 to transfer this land into the Council's housing revenue account for the delivery of new affordable homes. When we commenced the consultation on the Shottendane Road land, and it is only a consultation, we will be publishing details of the sites that have been looked at before and the criteria they were assessed against and the reasons why the council isn't taking them forward at this time. Because I absolutely think that there has to be transparency. That consultation will not begin until after the Police and Crime Commissioner election because, of course, there is guidance about what we do during election periods, even if it's a little bit fanciful that what we do in relation to this could affect the result of that election.
Thank you. Have we got a supplementary, Councillor Bright?
I do, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Everett, for your answer, and I'm really pleased to hear there will be cross-party support for the public consultation at Shottendane Road. It seems like it's obviously the best choice. Can the leader therefore confirm that TDC will be working with the current tenant to ensure the majority of the land remaining remains viable for agriculture?
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Everett to respond.
Yeah, there's a limit to what we can say publicly about agreements that we have with tenants, but I can confirm that we are anxious to work with the tenant in this case to ensure the future viability of the land for agricultural use, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 7J, question number 10 from the councillor regarding the Windsor Gardens. I call upon Councillor Packman.
Thank you, Chair. It's for Councillor Everett. I welcome the change made earlier this month by the Cabinet to reallocate £4 million to invest into the Winter Gardens and Labour's commitment to reopening this iconic Margate venue. But I am concerned about the public comment on social media from a Conservative councillor for Cliftonville that they think the Winter Gardens should be demolished. Would the leader please reiterate to all members and the importance of the Winter Gardens for Thanet and the folly of any calls to demolish it? Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Everett to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I've seen that comment, and it really is quite extraordinary that any member of this council would call for the Winter Gardens to be demolished. I'm not really sure whether to take it seriously, but still. As we know, the Winter Gardens is a significant heritage asset and Grade 2 listed building, and is specifically referenced in a published statement from English Heritage about Margate's seaside heritage. With much of the original 1911 architecture still intact, the Winter Gardens is one of the finest examples of a seaside concert hall in the UK. It's been a vital part of Margate's year-round offer, providing space for concerts, events and community gatherings. It's a valuable asset to the council, but more importantly to the community. And as you've alluded to, Cabinet has recently confirmed its commitment to the project with the decision to allocate £4 million of town deal funding to the Winter Gardens. I think I can say categorically, and I can probably speak for the Conservative front bench as well, is that there will be no support for demolishing the Winter Gardens. Because it really would defeat the object of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to preserve and improve an important heritage asset for future generations and a big part of Margate's history. And I'm afraid putting up a box as a replacement would not do that.
Thank you. Councillor Packman, do you want to have supplementary?
No, thank you.
Agenda item 7K, question number 11 from councillor regarding the 75th anniversary of the Viking ship Hugin. I call upon...
Point of order, Chair. Can't we cut it off now, Chair?
No, I want to know how he's going to put it into berth 3 and 4. You're on.
Thank you, Chair. For that, I'll take it. No. You'll be pleased it's a relatively short question, but this year it marks the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Danish government's gift of the Hugin Viking ship, which sits at Cliffsend. And that was to mark 1,500 years since their arrival at Ebbsfleet. Is Thanet Council planning to celebrate or commemorate this milestone in any way? And if not, would it give positive support to Cliffs End Parish Council's plans to do so? My question to Councillor Everett.
Thank you. Councillor Everett, can you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davis. I can confirm that Cliffs End Parish Council has been supported by the technical support team in how to put their event on. Parish Council is currently working on their event plans, and the Safety Advisory Group at TDC will provide feedback when these are received.
Councillor Davis, you've got supplementary.
I need to say thank you very much. I'll relay that as well. They'll be very pleased to hear it, and it's good to hear that we'll be doing something that actually marks the correct history of this. I'll add to that comment at future meetings.
Do you want to say anything else, Councillor Everett? No. Agenda item 8, notice of motion. 2 notices of motion have been received in accordance with the Council procedure, Rule 3. Please note that the time allowed for consideration of motions should not exceed 30 minutes. I ask councillors to be succulent and as possible. Agenda item 8A, notice of motion regarding the abuse of councillors and officers. I call upon Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. The motion that we are considering today is a deliberately inclusive version of the Local Government Association's Debate Not Hate motion, as adopted by over 55 councils of many different political persuasions across the country. It has already been signed by the Chair of the Local Government Association, political group leaders within the LGA, the Chair of London Councils, the Chair of the North West Regional Leaders Board, and well over 600 individual councillors. Local councils already signed up to support this campaign include Canterbury City Council, Dover District Council, and Tunbridge Wells Borough Council. In consideration of our previous No Excuse for Abuse campaign to support employees facing abuse or harassment, I have deliberately included both employees and councillors within the motion, as both should be accorded protection. The motion reads as follows. The intimidation and abuse of councillors and officers, in person or otherwise, undermines democracy, preventing elected members from representing the communities they serve, deterring individuals from standing for elections, and undermines public life, democratic processes, and working representation. This council notes that increasing levels of toxicity in public and political discourse is having a detrimental impact on local democracy, and that prevention, support, and responses to abuse and intimidation of local politicians and officers must improve to ensure councillors and employees feel safe and able to continue representing their residents. We therefore commit to challenge the normalisation of abuse against councillors and officers and uphold exemplary standards of public life and political debate in all we do. The Local Government Association's Debate Not Hate campaign aims to raise public awareness of the role of councillors in local communities, encourage healthy debate, and improve the response to and support those in public life facing abuse and intimidation. To tackle these issues effectively, we agree, firstly, that the Council signs up to the Local Government Association's Debate Not Hate campaign, that the leader of the Council writes to the local members of Parliament to ask them to support the Debate Not Hate campaign, that the leader of the Council writes to the Government to ask them to work with the Local Government Association to develop and implement a plan to address abuse and intimidation of politicians, that we collectively and individually support councillors and officers facing harassment and abuse and model positive behaviour and positive politics in our political lives, and that we make support and relevant training available to councillors in relation to abuse and intimidation, and that councillor safety related to this is explicitly included as part of our member induction programme. We need to be very clear about what is being discussed here, as some online discussions have muddled it somewhat, arguably deliberately. Nothing in the motion above limits disagreement, debate, or discussion in any way. What it does act on is bullying, harassment, and abuse. As our sometimes unfollowed code of conduct already dictates, we should already model positive behaviour in person and on social media. We should not target other councillors, abuse, harass or bully them, and we should support each other in actively challenging behaviour that actively seeks to harm other councillors or officers. This is not a frivolous matter. In the last LGA survey, 7 out of 10 councillors reported abuse. 81% of those reported an increase in abuse over the past year. 37% of councillors who have experienced abuse didn't report it, due to not feeling confident enough of receiving support from their council or authorities. This is not just an issue of conduct and support. It is also an issue of access, especially for neurodivergent individuals and councillors with sensory disabilities. As an autistic woman, I am more than aware that politics is a very challenging world for autistic people. I carry my headphones with me at all times. I struggle to filter sensory input, struggle to process during significant noise and disturbance, and there have been times during council meetings where shouting and heckling have made it incredibly difficult to function. Councillors with hearing needs or impairments can equally struggle. Acknowledging that significant heckling or shouting of abuse, such as swearing at or verbally abusing councillors, actively discourages individuals from standing, is not a restriction on freedom of speech. It is a recognition of not only our existing rules, but also the importance of diversity in our chamber. In the past 5 years, my reality has included being told that being autistic should disqualify me from being a councillor. I have had to read online content referring to sexual acts being perpetrated on me and commentary on my breasts allowed on pages run by a councillor. I have had threats posted online, both verbalised to me and shared on social media. I have had my intelligence and communication abilities insulted based on individuals' perception of the abilities of autistic people, have had residents try to find out where I live, and I have become used to being told online that I am useless, pathetic, disgusting, a failure, and not fit to be in politics, and that my very existence in politics lets down the autistic community. I am not in any way alone in this. I share this to demonstrate how normalised this behaviour has become. I have seen officers and fellow councillors of all political persuasions abused and intimidated. The latest LGA research includes the following statistics. 27% of councillors responding to an LGA survey stated that we will not stand again after this term, with 68% of those stating that abuse and intimidation had influenced their decision not to stand again. A not unusual reaction when I raise these issues is one of a belief in the normalcy of these behaviours in politics, that behaviour that in any other workplace would be considered extraordinary and would warrant protection for the individuals involved is something that we all have to get used to, and as a double blow that we are not fit for politics if we dare to question why, as a society, we consider this to be normal and acceptable. Nothing in this motion affects freedom of speech or the ability to comment on, disagree with, or dissect the work of councillors. We take on the knowledge of the necessity of our work coming under both chamber and public scrutiny the moment we are elected. But there is a huge difference between criticism of our work, which is a necessary and normal part of functioning in this chamber, and deliberate bullying, targeting, or harassment. When we step into this role, we agree to abide by the Nolan principles, our own code of conduct, and the standards we hold ourselves to. Nothing in this motion falls outside these pre-existing requirements. This is simply a nationwide commitment by the LGA to acknowledge that disagreement does not require abuse and debate does not require hate. Over 55 councils across the country of all political persuasions have already supported this motion. I hope very much that tonight we all choose to join in that support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Alban. The controlling political group is entitled to reply. However, due to it being the motion from the controlling political group, the leader has offered the response to the leader of the opposition, and I have agreed. I therefore call upon Councillor Pugh Would councillors please note that in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3.7, if it is not agreed to debate, the motion will fall. Only the council can agree the motion. Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for bringing this motion to full council. You're certainly a hard act to follow. I think it's safe to say that from our previous full council meeting last month that this motion is incredibly needed. I'm not going to rehash over what happened, but it's a sad fact that many councillors are being suffering from abuse and intimidation, not necessarily on a daily basis, although I do sympathise with what you've been going through, Councillor Whitehead. It is important that we send a message that it's not tolerated, it's not acceptable. But I think there's also a wider lesson here in that we as councillors need to lead by example, and we need to be careful how we interact with each other. And I say that in that we've had some very robust debating and questions within this chamber. But contrary to popular belief, as shadow leader, I'm not here to make the leader's life a complete misery. And I really do hope that he doesn't have nightmares about me or utter Manston Airport reopening in his sleep. But no. Well, that's reassuring. But what I would say is that I've had instances before where, and Councillor Whitehead, you said about heckling and that being part of being a councillor. I completely agree. But when it comes to a councillor speaking in this chamber and potentially going over their time, I mean, that big clock there is always a reminder that, you know, time is winding down. I think it's really important that even if we do go over a bit of the time, that we're all respectful and we at least let people finish what they're trying to say. I've been heckled before and shouted down to stop speaking, and I don't think that really benefits anyone. I think that's really important. So because of that, I'm in support of this motion. I think that we need to send a message that we're not going to tolerate this behaviour, and I think we all need to be a little bit kinder to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer and a seconder to debate the motion? Right. Councillor Wing.
I didn't really want to be here today. In fact, following from last meeting, I went home and decided that maybe this wasn't the role for me at all. But I'm going to start. I am dyslexic. I'm reading from a script. I very rarely do that. But I'm reading from a script again, and 2 different scripts, so please bear with me. I'm reading from the Local Government Association's documentation on how we should behave as councillors. And I really welcome the motion from Councillor Whitehead, because there are too many incidents of bullying and intimidation and harassment, not only directed at councillors, but also between councillors. So, general conduct. First one's respect. As a councillor, I treat other councillors and members of the public with respect. I'm not reading all of this. I'm reading the bits that I think were pertinent to what happened to me in the last meeting. Respect means politeness and courtesy in behaviour, speech and in the written word. Debate and having different views are all part of healthy democracy. As a councillor, you can express, challenge, criticise and disagree with views and ideas, opinions and policies in a robust and civil manner. You should not, however, subject individuals, groups or people or organisations to personal attack. He goes on to describe bullying, harassment and discrimination, which I think is really important for us to all try and understand. I taught for 26 years, so I witnessed many examples of bullying and helped the school develop a new bullying policy, and the key people in developing that policy were the pupils we taught. As a councillor, I do not bully any person, I do not harass any person, I promote equalities and do not discriminate unlawfully against any person. ACAS characterises bullying as offensive, intimidating, malicious or insulting behaviour, an abuse or misuse of power through means that undermine, humiliate, denigrate or injure the recipient. I certainly felt some of those things at the last meeting. I know some of my Green colleagues did too. So certainly there were behaviours that we shouldn't be proud of. Bullying, harassment and discrimination usually involves an actual or a perceived position of power differential. used negatively or not positively to support and empower others. Within this chamber, there are many differentials in terms of power that exist here. Numbers, knowledge, position, for example. Sadly, since being elected in 2019, I have witnessed and recently experienced incidents of bullying, as described by the LGA, and not acceptable in any other environment, for example, the workplace. This is where there's a little bit of a blip here, because as councillors, we're not covered by some of the workforce legislation. I therefore welcome this motion and hope we will all take stock, and I mean all of us, take stock of our behaviours, and in so doing, make this a safe place for all to be and engage in equally and positively, as well as model a much more positive view of politics to the residents we represent. Anybody watching that last meeting will have been pretty shocked at at the behaviours that were in this room, and I don't think any of us can be proud of that. I therefore hope that the key principles of debate, not hate, which was taken to Ramsgate Town Council by myself and accepted months ago, are accepted in their widest possible sense and in everything we do as a council, and that when councillors or officers are subjected to bullying, harassment and discrimination, this council develops systems, particularly for councillors that suffer these types of behaviours, because what I found is there is no actually support system once you've experienced something like this for councillors. Thank you.
Councillor Dawson, you put your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm supporting the motion because it supports awareness of healthy debate. This incorporates all arenas between the public and councillors, councillors to councillors, and councillors and officers. The right engagement matters, and there must be zero tolerance for abuse or intimidation. I welcome support systems for councillors should they need to discuss abuse issues, and welcome effective response from the police should an incident become escalated. It is important that councillors remain self-aware of their own conduct and the impact of their behaviour in their own reputation, and that of the council. Most, if not all, of our committees are streamed to the public, and how we behave is vital. We must lead by example. Officers cannot respond if debate spirals into chaos. There is a threshold in which the LGA constitutes as disrespect. They state is when a councillor talking to an officer is lower than a councillor to councillor context. I believe the council should consider forming a cross-party working group which encourages an effective debate, not hate working practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I support the motion, but I think it's very sad that it's necessary. All of us have been elected by our residents, and I think in doing so they expect us to behave in a way that is both professional and respectful to each other and to officers. It's unfortunate that we have to bring about a motion such as this and to sign up to documents that ask us to do this. This is something that should come naturally. We have a code of conduct. We should respect that at all times and abide by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this motion, and thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for bringing it to Council, and thank you also for sharing your experiences so bravely. Using social media as a stage to be abusive to others and to spread harmful lies is not acceptable behaviour, especially for someone in public office who is elected to uphold the Nolan principles. Those who do it should be ashamed. In an age where young people's mental health is heavily impacted by negative social media and where some have taken their lives as a result, what kind of message are they receiving when older people, who frankly should know better, are trying to normalise and encourage harassment and intimidation on public platforms? It's not politics, it's bullying. This motion sends a clear message that enough is enough. It's not okay to attack people and spread hate and lies. It's a call to action to spend more time in the real world trying to make a positive difference and to step away from keyboards and hate-filled messages that benefit no one. I'd like to see this chamber with more. I'd like this chamber to be more representative, with more young people, women, and minority groups putting themselves forward for election next time. Anyone who spreads lies and abusive comments is willfully discouraging these people from getting involved and is not being the role model they were elected to be. I hope this motion results in some positive action so councillors and officers feel safer and more supported to get on with their jobs. And I hope it sends a clear message to those who waste their time attacking others that this council will no longer tolerate it.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Councillor Donald.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out that also at the first tier council level, as well as the Debate Not Hate campaign, which is the LGA initiative, the SLCC, which is the Society of Local Council Clerks, launched an initiative in 2020 called Civility and Respect, where parish and town councils have this problem. And it has been estimated that 10% of parish and town councils have become essentially dysfunctional because of the gross, abusive, atrocious behaviour of a minority of councillors on the council. And indeed, I regret to admit that, Westgate Town Council, we did suffer from this problem early last year, but we've managed to kind of get a grip of it. I have actually also been working with the National Association of Local Councils, particularly Keith Stevens, on trying to put some teeth into what we can do in terms of disciplining councillors who are guilty of this kind of conduct, and indeed making breaches of the Code of Conduct a criminal offence, the same as a breach of, something like predetermination. And, monitoring officers have found it difficult to sort of discipline councillors because they don't actually have a kind of disciplinary process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
I'm going to concentrate on the social media aspect of the motion and say technology in the 21st century has segued us to communicate in ways we could never have predicted. We can now easily form a protective barrier around us from the safety of our armchairs while checking in and on other people's lives. Social media has made it possible to air views where facts hardly matter. In place of facts, some people now bring opinions, gossip, and cliched personal insults into the debate. It's with great sadness that this often involves a way of communicating that's too easily leading to a more aggressive and combative style of interaction. Cowardly keyboard warriors are exactly that, cowardly, and it should be called out every time. When we talk about voting to not bully others, we're not talking about an isolated act of cruelty. We're talking about a systemic problem that perpetuates cycles of pain and unnecessary suffering. Bullying doesn't just hurt the individual being targeted. It's more sinister, more pernicious, and more poisonous. It creates a culture of fear and intimidation that affects everyone. Every vote against bullying is a vote for respect, integrity, and dignity. It's a vote for a future where we rely on constructive disagreement. Who wouldn't want to hold on to a civilized society? Who would prefer to threaten rather than debate intelligently? And who wouldn't vote for this motion?
you. That's it. A call upon Councillor Whitehead to read out the wording of the motion once again, please. You sneaked in there, Councillor Cup.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to put my own opinion on this record because I think it's really important this motion has been brought forward. So thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for doing so. When I was first a councillor, there was an article that was published about myself that related to a position that I took on something that was rather political at the time, but it led to myself being receiving many different emails and even to having emails that were threatening against my life. And that was when I was 21 and just first elected, and it was not particularly anything nice to be part of, and it is not something that I wish anyone to go through. And I always believe that if you start turning a debate personal, then you have lost that debate completely. And whilst we are all rather thick-skinned in here, and we have to be thick-skinned to be in the position that we are in, elected and representing our communities, that does not mean that there is any right for anyone to attack us personally. And we need to make sure that within this chamber that we are debating on things and on topics and keeping it to those topics to make sure that we are showing that as a chamber and as a council that we are open for everyone to join this council, whether you're young, what background you're from, it doesn't matter, because you shouldn't be receiving abuse, and that you can come to this chamber as a safe place and debate and speak the mind and represent your residents fairly and properly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Councillor Matterface.
Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be fairly quick. Like a lot of councillors, both present and in the past, I have received abusive emails. But sometimes there is a good Samaritan out there. I'll tell you a very brief story. I was on the bus going to Ramsgate some while ago. A woman got on, never seen her before, haven't a clue who she was. We said, "Oh, you're that Jenny Matterface." And obviously, I admitted I was, thinking, oh, she was going to comment on something positive. She started haranguing me. All the things I had allegedly done, all the crimes I'd committed, which were certainly all new to me. And she went on, and I said, come on, it's not the time, it's not the place. And the bus was quite busy, and other passengers were getting quite embarrassed. This went on from Broadstairs to Ramsgate. The driver had obviously had enough, because at one point, he stopped the bus between stops, which they're not allowed to do, got out his little cubicle, went to her and said, "You're getting off my bus. I am not having you abusing that lady." That was me. And she got off. I have no idea who she was. I have no idea what her argument with me was. But my good Samaritan was the driver. And he said to me as I got off at the harbour, "I have no objections," I quote, "to robust debate, but I'm not having that nonsense on my bus." So, you know, there are some good folk out there. We've all been on the receiving end of it. But he sort of restored my faith in people because he came basically, I didn't need rescuing, but he felt he wanted to make a point, and she got off and she had to walk the rest of the way. Thank you.
Right, I call upon Councillor Whitehead to read out the wording of the motion once again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe I'm supposed to sum up rather than just reading the motion. Yeah.
Yes, you can,
Okay.
yes.
Firstly, I would like to thank wholeheartedly everyone who has spoken and members as a whole for considering the motion. What we are considering here has nothing to do with the right to free speech, debate or disagreement. The motion, as read at the start of this debate, makes that clear. My existence within this chamber crosses over several different protected characteristics. Unlike the narrative around this motion that has been publicly and negatively discussed, this motion is not about shielding anyone with a protected characteristic from criticism or debate of their work, as both criticism and debate is entirely necessary. It is instead about how we support each other in building our abilities as councillors, enabling all of us to participate to the fullest extent of our abilities, and a deliberate commitment to protect each other from conduct that clearly falls into the classification of bullying or harassment. I've been an elected councillor for 5 years now, and in a senior position for the majority of it. Being in this position automatically places you into situations where you have to make difficult decisions and be judged not only for your commitment and contribution, but also your decisions, your viewpoints, and your ability to function effectively within this space. And it is not easy, and it should not be easy. The issues that we discuss and decide upon are too important for these to be easy roles. We all have to be open and accepting of a level of criticism and public criticism that the vast majority of people would run from. Often, to a large degree, our lives are not our own, and I believe that we are all aware of that challenge. Neurodivergence can make this more complicated. Many autistic and neurodivergent people can struggle more than the general population with bullying and harassment, and it can have far-reaching consequences. The answer to that, however, is not to exclude us, but to look to how we make politics not only constructive, but also inclusive. No one should have to choose to face bullying, targeting, or harassment simply to be able to make a difference to their community. Nothing in this infringes anyone's rights to self-expression. It simply restates our commitment to the values that we already enshrine within our standards, the Nolan Principles, and our Code of Conduct, at a time when we are heading towards a politically turbulent time nationally, and at a time where 70% of councillors report experiencing abuse, and 37% of councillors affected by abuse do not feel confident enough of being supported to report instances of abuse. I have witnessed abuse and targeting of councillors of all political persuasions, and make a point of standing with anyone affected by this. I do not allow negative politics on my social media, let alone abuse, and I will defend any councillor or officer experiencing targeting or abuse, regardless of where we sit in this chamber. I am also very aware of where the normalisation of abuse towards those in public service can lead us. We have seen 2 MPs murdered in recent times, with both murders being linked to individuals who specifically targeted MPs based on their individual principles or policy stances. We have lost both Joe Cox MP and Sir David Ames MP in the worst way possible, a clear reflection that this issue knows no political boundaries and affects all of us. There is nothing weak in acknowledging that those in public service should be protected from abuse, as abuse and intimidation is incredibly different, even from robust policy criticism. I can very easily hold my own in a debate. I do not need anyone to hold my hand. But equally, debate should never include personal insults or negative behaviour, and in fact it weakens the strength of a debate every time it veers into the personal. What I believe we have previously created here in this chamber, and continue to work towards now, especially in relation to this motion, is open politics. Open politics requires you and you only. It doesn't require factions. It can't work in secrecy. It can't function through agendas. It withers if forced to limit itself to groupings, and can't exclude or shun. It is frankly the easiest way for most autistic individuals to be, the healthiest environment to work in, and the best way by far to foster genuine democracy. Negative politics requires factions and secrecy to function. It requires agendas and groupings, and requires being willing to never be fully open, honest, or transparent. It is frankly the kind of environment and mindset that makes most autistic individuals ill and most residents disengaged. The ability to connect on shared issues is a power greater than any individual ideal. Any particular policy point. Because to serve a community, you have to be able to connect as one. And to do that, you find your similarities, not your differences. Negative politics values power and a particular set of ideals, depending on who holds that power. Open politics asks what power is, holds it up to the light, looks at how it functions, and not only asks how it can function better, but also asks everyone around how they think it can function better. As a council, we are on the cusp of something different, if we're brave enough to look at our systems. We are at a point where equity rather than simply equality seems possible, where communities form based on shared beliefs rather than dissolve based on difference. As someone who has stood on the outside for a very long time, and probably always will, believe me when I say that unity is something profound. unity that includes and recognises difference, that can debate and disagree but still include. That is something truly extraordinary, and it is something that this motion works towards, as it is something that I genuinely believe this chamber can achieve. The Debate Not Hate motion simply asks Council to support debate, discussion or even disagreement, and to acknowledge that neither councillors nor officers should experience abuse, harassment or bullying. I have and will continue to support councillors of any political background experiencing the above. I know that there are those in this chamber who will attest to that. All that is being asked here is that alongside many other councils across the country, we commit to supporting each other and our community in promoting positive politics and supporting all council colleagues who are exposed to the worst of negative politics. I thank you hugely all for your time and your contributions, and I hope that tonight we all recognise the importance of supporting the Debate Not Hate campaign, and in turn supporting our colleagues and the democratic future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just read out the motion?
If you think we need to, I will, but...
No, somebody's told me you don't have to.
No.
Right. Right, so do councillors agree? Do you want to show of hands on that, or is that? Yes.
Yep. 4. 4. There's 4.
Against? Abstentions? Thank you. Right, now then, we have run out of time, but I've been told that I can give you 20 minutes for the next item, which is the notion of motion regarding the fair tax declaration. So can you be mindful of the fact that it's 20 minutes? So called upon Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your indulgence in giving us a little more time. We have looked at this motion previously and it's gone back for reports from officers, so I'm hoping that people are fairly familiar with it and that I don't need to read the whole motion out, but it actually follows on very closely from much of the discussion that we've had already. We've talked about our commitment to transparency. We've talked about the Nolan principles. We've talked about making a fresh start in this council and putting behind some of the bad practice of the past. And we know that there has been bad practice in the past in this council. We're none of us very proud of it, but this is a new situation that we're in now, and we know that we are confident in the way that we are proceeding on tax and financial matters, thanks to the excellent work of our officers in those regards. The officers have looked at our motion, they've made some suggestions. There is one small change to the motion as originally produced, which I believe officers have on paper to hand round. Is that okay? Yep. Thank you. So I'll just read out the introductory rubric for this motion, just to set it in context. The Green Group is proposing this motion to highlight the positive role that tax plays in our society. Tax should not be seen as a burden, as it is characterised by some politicians and certain media. If we all pay our fair share, it's a means of funding essential public services and ensuring all our communities are properly supported. As a responsible public body, we want to lead by example, to stand up for better standards and campaign to change public procurement rules. Between 2014 and 2019, 17.5% of public procurement contracts were won by businesses with a connection to a tax haven. We find this unacceptable, and so do the majority of the public. Polls show over 60% of people believe public bodies should be able to consider company ethics and responsible tax conduct when awarding contracts to suppliers, but at present we're not permitted to do so. We're therefore asking Council to support
a motion which approves the Councils for Fair Tax declaration and commits us to responsible conduct in our tax affairs and to pushing governments of whatever flavour in the future to consider looking at these issues to ensure that we can all behave in the manner that we wish to do with integrity and fairness and transparency. The change, as indicated on your sheet from the original proposal, is in clause 5, which now reads, the Council commits to not using not-for-profit structures inappropriately as an artificial device to reduce the payment of tax and business rates. Thank you.
Nick's going to make an announcement.
A point of clarity, members, is just to make it very clear that this is a change to the motion that was received this morning within the time allowance that members are allowed to change their motions to council. It is not an amendment, because amendments are not allowed on notices of motion, just to make that clear. So it's perfectly valid.
Right, it's open to debate. Scobie?
Can I just request some clarity, because in the report it states that there is an amount of £50,000 that council officers have estimated this will cost, and that relates to two of the points. One of the points has been deleted, but do officers still believe that there would be a £50,000 cost of the second point of demanding clarity on the ultimate beneficial ownership of suppliers? That comment.
Who's answering that?
To Councillor Yates.
Right, Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Happy to answer that. I'll just respond to Councillor Austin before I do, if that's okay. So yeah, I completely support this motion. It was brought up within the Labour group. I think being transparent and following the Ireland principles is something we completely support. And the statistics speak volumes. And as you said, over 60% of the public agree that local councils should consider how companies pay their tax, as well as value for money. And roughly 17.5% of UK public procurement contracts with a value of £37 billion were won by businesses with connections to tax havens. So making sure businesses pay their tax is something we fully support. We have, and I appreciate, Councillor Austin, you've shared your communications with myself for the changes that are being tonight. And to answer Councillor Scobie's question, the changes tonight basically mean that there won't be a £50,000 cost. It'll be no cost to the council, which is something where there has had to be some dialogue back and forth, because as most of us are aware, we are not, the council is not made of money. So fully support this motion tonight, and thank you for bringing it forward, and thank you for your patience bringing it to tonight's council. Thank you.
Is anybody else want? Councillor Bright?
I didn't think I'd be standing up and talking about tax tonight, because I'm not an economist. What I am, though, is someone who's more than happy to pay tax. I think tax is an investment. I hate it when people compare national finance or local government finance to household finance. But when I moved into my house, it was falling apart, so I invested in it. And that is what tax does. Tax is an investment in our future. The happiest colleagues I have at work, I work internationally, and the happiest colleagues, Chair, are those living in Denmark and Sweden and Norway and Finland, and they pay an eye-water. And it does hurt when you pay tax, but it's for the greater good. And they pay a lot of tax, and their societies are happier, they're cleaner, they have a better work-life balance. Everything about them is just pretty much perfect. You hate them, don't you? But I fully support this. I fully support paying tax, and we do need to put pressure, maybe, hopefully, on any new Prime Minister and any new government to just make that message a little bit clearer.
Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Austin, for bringing this motion forward. In principle, it's not a motion that I don't support. Very happy to support it. I suppose my only question would be, and I don't know if this is for you, Councillor Austin, or for Councillor Yates, is that if we vote to approve this motion or pass this motion, how any of this is enforceable by the council, what actions are going to have to be taken by the council, not just by councillors, because we're passing this motion, but it will be for officers' responsibility to implement it. What actions will be required to be taken? And I appreciate that Councillor Yates has said that there will no longer be a cost to implementing these, but I think there's obviously will be a potential pressure on officers' time. So I'm quite keen to ensure that we don't overburden officers with more things, checks that they need to do. But there's not really necessarily anything that I can disagree with this on. I understand why you've said that tax should not be seen as a burden, and of course it shouldn't be. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I completely agree with Councillor Bright. It is an investment. Scandinavian countries are a lot happier. Norway is very happy, and they pay a lot of tax, but I think they also receive a lot of revenue from their natural oil and gas fields. So I think that is something to consider. I know, well, I'm just saying. They may also pay a lot more tax on cigarettes and booze, so it's depending on how happy you want to keep people. It kind of depends. But just to reiterate, I've got no problem with this motion. I just feel there needs to be a bit of clarity in how officers will be able to implement this, that's all.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Austin, for your presentation. I'm not actually speaking on anything that's gone on this motion. My concern is that this evening we've received paper copies of an amendment which we had emailed to us this evening. We've also got an amendment that's been printed out again, which we're looking at for this very meeting, and then they're going to be discarded. Could we not have had this sent by email and try and make the council more greener by not wasting paper? Because I think it's important that we should be a green council. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I expect that will be noted. So, Councillor Austin, do you want to sum up?
He's already spoken, hasn't he? Yeah.
Again. Councillor Yates then.
It's just a point of, as Councillor Pugh mentioned myself, I just want to clarify that this is a point of principle tonight. So, although we won't have enforcement capabilities, I think it's important that we make our position clear where we stand. And although we can demand clarity from companies, it's very difficult without finances to do much more. But I think it's a point of principle we're making tonight, and I very much support and thank Councillor Pugh for his support of that tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Austin, you want to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. Thanks very much to everybody who's spoken this evening and everybody who's indicated their support for this. I think what we're saying is this is a motion which sets out how we behave already and how we intend to behave in the future, how we commit to behaving. We will be about the 50th council in the country to adopt this motion, so we're ahead of the game. And as I said, in the light of some of our history, that's probably not a bad thing. It will not stop what the Vice Chair has called the cowardly keyboard warriors, thank you for that, I'll bear that one in mind, from suggesting the words brown envelopes every time they mention a councillor or anything that's going on, but it will allow us to be quite clear about what we stand for and to proceed with integrity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now move to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? Those against? Abstentions? Thank you. So the motion is adopted. Agenda item 9, Leader's Report. A call upon the Leader.
Thank you, Chair. And as we're meeting on the eve of Christmas Eve, what a good start. As we're meeting on the eve of Good Friday, and in the spirit of the debate so far, let me wish everybody a happy Easter. And to our Muslim councillors and our Muslim residents, let me say Ramadan Mubarak, and in due course, Eid Mubarak. When the Chancellor of the Exchequer sat down on March the 6th after delivering his budget, the general reaction was that it had contained little that was new, as it had mostly been pre-announced through the media. But that was not the situation here at Thanet District Council, because we were very surprised to discover that Ramsgate had been awarded an additional £20 million as part of an extension of the long-term plan for towns, which was originally announced in September last year. Unlike the Margate Town deal and the Levelling Up Awards, but in common with that for the 55 previous recipients of this money, this is not something that local authorities have bid for. It is, of course, very welcome news, but it's also indicative of the government's haphazard approach to such major funding, that it landed unexpectedly, with little or no explanation, and even without any of the publicity fanfare which you might expect. And indeed, on the night it was announced, the BBC were in Ramsgate and announced that Eastbourne had been awarded 20 million. They're completely missing the story, as everybody else has since. This incoherent approach, I think, is probably one reason why the Public Accounts Committee recently reported that very few levelling up projects have been delivered so far nationally. Indeed, the latest announcement came just a few days after the first meeting of the new Thanet Partnership Board, itself a government initiative which brought together oversight of the town deal, levelling up and future high street funds delivery. We don't yet have clarity as to whether we can manage this award through that structure or have to set up another board, in line with the prescriptive arrangements previously attached to this funding, which in any case is over a much longer lifespan of 10 years. We do now know that we have to submit a plan by November the 1st. But there are still plenty of questions about this money to which we don't have answers. We are fortunate, however, that in the work which started under the Labour administration in 2021 to engage with the community in Ramsgate and explore the opportunities for the town, that is well advanced and continuing, particularly through the development of the Ramsgate Place Plan. I can also say we have a great team of officers working on Ramsgate regeneration who I know, like me, are excited by the further opportunity that this money represents. On the subject of confusing messages coming out of government, Council will be aware that the Home Office has now shelved plans to build a secure removals centre at Manston, which decision it fed back to officers last week. That is the opposite of what we were told in January, which was itself a reversal of what we were given to understand in the autumn. Now, rather than score political points about government policy on this issue, I have simply sought to be transparent with the Council and with residents about what we have known throughout this period. And I have to say that's led to some very confusing discussions with Sir Roger Gale MP, who was frequently getting different messages from ministers than we were from civil servants. So I hope this is the end of the matter. But it's already being reported that rising numbers of migrants are crossing the Channel this year. So who knows what the position will be after the election. The Home Office does plan to upgrade the standard of its migrant reception facility at Manston, creating permanent structures to replace temporary ones. And we will continue to liaise with them about planning issues related to that, although this council will not be the decision maker. In Margate, we are relaunching the marketing exercise for the Winter Gardens with the £4 million town deal funding now attached to the opportunity, and we intend to hold a further open day for interested parties in April. Instead of expressions of interest, we're now asking them to tell us their plan for the site's future, so that we can move matters forward as quickly as possible. I was asked on Radio Kent last week if the Winter Gardens would reopen before the general election. Now, I know the government isn't keen to face the verdict of the voters, and I can understand why, but even allowing for them clinging on as long as possible, that deadline is likely to be unrealistic given the scale of the works needed. What I am clear about is that the availability of this £4 million means the prospects for the Winter Gardens are more positive than they have been in many years. We want to use this funding to lever in additional investment, but it is a substantial start on what is needed. The money currently has to be committed by March 2026 in any event, but we do understand how much of a priority this issue is for residents. We also understand the heritage value of the site, which is part of the challenge. And I can reassure everyone that a Labour council will not be knocking the place down and starting again, as suggested by one Conservative councillor, because that would be missing the point entirely. It won't surprise anyone that I want to celebrate the continuing success of our push to expand the council's affordable housing stock. The new administration last May targeted 400 over 4 years, and well under 12 months into this council, we were recently able to announce that we've secured 200 of those already, in various stages of development. It just shows what we can achieve as a council with a political focus and a committed team of officers across the relevant departments working together to deliver for residents. Somebody at the Kent Messenger said to me recently in an interview that 400 isn't very many. And of course, there is a bigger housing challenge out there, locally and nationally. But if you are one of the Thanet families on our housing waiting list who secures a new property, that is 100% of your problem solved. So we are making a difference, and that's what we're here for. And if we can push on beyond 400 in the next few years, then that is certainly what we will do. I noted that many of the online comments associated with this story referenced the need for cleaner streets and suggested that would be a better way of spending the money. Well, of course, that isn't possible because the housing funding is based on housing income and grants and is ring-fenced for that purpose. But we do have cleaner streets as a priority too, a key priority too. Thus far, we have been constrained by the budget we inherited from the previous administration, and that's just a fact, it's not a dig. But the increased spending on cleansing and open spaces that Council agreed in the budget in February becomes available next week with the start of the new financial year, and I would expect to see tangible progress over the coming months. There will be more staff and more equipment, but I'm also clear that the new heads of service that we have in place in these areas are fully focused on this and that they will help us deliver better outcomes for residents. We recently had a councillor briefing from the Council's Home Energy team about the great work they are doing, which can help residents access grants and learn about opportunities to improve the energy efficiency of their homes, saving them money and reducing CO2 emissions to help tackle climate change. As part of that, the team produced bespoke packs with detailed information for each ward. Apart from being a really important piece of work in itself, it's a great way for us to engage with residents in our wards and perhaps to tackle some of the scepticism that surrounds the role we play. So I do hope that as many councillors as possible take up the opportunity to work with the team and get the message out to their residents right across Thanet, and I know that a number have already. Related to climate change, it's great news that we've been awarded $675,000 from the Swimming Pool Support Fund, which we will use for solar panels and variable speed filter pumps at the Ramsgate Leisure Centre. And that will help greatly towards our target of getting the council's own buildings to net zero by 2030. Last week we announced the award of more than £200,000 in grants from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Some 194,000 of this went to 26 community, voluntary and social enterprise groups across the most deprived communities in the district, focused on Cliftonville West, Dane Valley and Margate Central, and Newington Northwood and Central Harbour and Eastcliff. 9 further grants of £1,500 have been awarded, which will allow the successful groups to develop business plans for their proposed projects. 5 grants of between £10,000 and £20,000 will be awarded under the second phase to fund year-long pilot schemes. This money has been allocated by the council to the areas where it can deliver the most difference in communities that statistically need the most help, and I'm never going to apologise for that. But I know that councillors in Broadstairs and other areas want to see support for groups in their wards, which is why we will focus similar awards from the Thanet Lottery on a wider canvas. This is the council working constructively with the community, and I'm looking forward to seeing positive outcomes that we can celebrate in the months and years ahead. Also looking ahead, it is pleasing that the Local Government Boundary Commission for England supported the Council's recommendation that we should move to 42 councillors in 2027, and we can now focus on the next stage of proposals for the new ward boundaries. Finally, I wanted to mention the recent opportunity that the Council announced to lease Ramsgate's 8 vandalised and neglected concrete coastal shelters. I was well aware that this would attract a certain amount of derision on social media, and inevitably it did. In practice, the Council had already been approached for permission to use them. But we can't just give away assets. We have to be fair to others who might want the same opportunity. And we quickly accumulated 13 expressions of interest. So let's see what happens. If it's nothing, then the sceptics will be proven right and can say that they told us so. Maybe, though, something positive will come out of it. The community will be no worse off if it doesn't. But whatever happens, we can't allow the negativity that sometimes surrounds us to drag us down. Thanet can be better. There are plenty of people working to make it so, and this council will help deliver that positive change.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. I call upon Councillor Pugh to comment or ask questions in relation to the Leader's report.
Thank you, Chair, and Councillor, and thank you, Councillor Everett. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Leader for sharing his report with me ahead of full Council this evening. I must say, from the Leader's report, anyone would think that there's a general election coming up. Hints of optimism, coincidentally, for all the things that the Conservative government have helped to deliver. But a sense of pressing negativity. The Leader mentions the Chancellor of the Exchequer delivering his budget, a budget which cut national insurance for millions of people. The irony is that our own budget raised council tax, and in the last 12 months, this Labour administration has pushed through a 16% increase to councillors' allowances. The Leader refers to the announcement that Ramsgate will receive an extra £20 million of funding through the long-term plan for towns. Another example of the Conservative government delivering for Thanet residents. We will wait to hear on whether the Partnership Board can assume the oversight function for delivering this funding. But in the meantime, will the Leader commit to ensuring that the funding is not swallowed up by consultancy fees and ensure that the vast majority of the funding will actually be spent within Ramsgate to the benefit of residents? The Leader mentions that very few levelling up projects nationally have been delivered so far. I completely agree. And the deadline for the levelling up funds that have been allocated for Margate and Ramsgate and the town deal for Margate, although that is a different deadline, are fast approaching. There are many aspects of these projects that should by now be effectively shovel-ready. The new skate park in Margate being one of them. I should know, as I was the Cabinet member that introduced the transfer of the site at a Cabinet meeting almost 2 years ago. So will the Leader commit to delivering all of the current projects that are included within the Ramsgate Levelling Up Fund and the Margate Town deal? We've already seen the Smack Boys project dropped and the Oval Bandstand in Cliftonville. And whilst the reallocation of £4 million for Dreamland to the Winter Gardens is welcomed, surely now is the time to get on with things. Of course, there's one levelling up project that will be delivered purely due to the support of the Conservatives locally, the Margate Digital Campus. After we took control in June 2021, our first Cabinet meeting was to submit the bid for Margate Digital at a time when it was voiced that the Margate levelling up bid could jeopardise the Ramsgate bid. How wrong Labour were, and I'm sure the Leader is glad that we now have 2 levelling up funds in the district, albeit thanks to the government. The Leader refers to the processing facility at Manston, and it is interesting to hear that the Leader and officers were receiving different messages than Sir Roger Gale was. I know that Sir Roger Gale has been communicating with the Home Secretary for some time on this, and I'm sure the Leader will agree with me that we are incredibly lucky to have 2 long-standing MPs in Thanet, who really do fight for their constituents, and long may that continue. It is welcome news that the process for securing an operator for the Winter Gardens will be accelerated in light of the additional £4 million of town deal funding that has been reallocated from Dreamland. The Leader mentions that the funding has to be committed by March 2026, and whilst we may not know which month the next general election will take place in, I'm sure the Leader will appreciate that the Winter Gardens has been closed for long enough, too long in fact. And so can the Leader give us an idea of when he wants to see the Winter Gardens reopened? Perhaps in time for when Labour has 2 Labour MPs, although I appreciate he may not want to commit to a time frame that has no end in sight. I know, it's brilliant, isn't it? The Leader celebrates the delivery of over 2,000 affordable homes for local people, out of a promised 400. Did I say 2,000? Sorry, 200, sorry. Apologies. That's my dyslexia there, flying in. This is rightly cause for celebration, but I doubt that political focus has anything to do with it. The previous Conservative administration was just as determined to deliver housing for local people. But for local people, but what we actually need and in the right places. The proposal to purchase affordable housing which is being provided on new developments was not put to us. That is a fact. Whether the council will really break even in time on these new homes is another question entirely. The Leader talks of the budget that his administration has inherited from the previous Conservative administration. If a sound budget which delivers on what the council can afford, whilst keeping council tax affordable for residents is constraining, then perhaps Labour need to go back to the drawing board. or even their spreadsheets. This recent budget took over £750,000 out of reserves. No doubt the leader will blame central government for why Labour could bankrupt the council, and so I wonder how long that will last if he does receive his wish of a Labour government. The fact is that we bolstered our reserves to a healthy level, as they should be. The alternative is to make costly and wasteful decisions on spending which result in residents facing 21% increases to their council tax, as has been seen in Birmingham recently. I would like to join the leader in thanking the Home Energy team for their work to brief councillors on the work they're doing on how residents can access grants to improve energy efficiency for their homes. It is also welcome news that grants have been awarded from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Whilst the fund is small compared to the Levelling Up and Town Deal funding this district has received, it has the potential to improve the lives of people in Thanet that need our help the most. The leader talks about the leasing of council assets, namely 8 coastal shelters in Ramsgate. Whilst this is welcome news, will the leader commit to a full review of all TDC assets to ensure that we are receiving fair returns? The recent news of the former CAF at the Western Undercliff for sale for, I believe, £1.2 million illustrates that we must do better at securing value for money for residents. And finally, I'm sure the leader will join me in congratulating Councillor Cupp on the birth of his daughter. I was going to say new daughter, his daughter. I believe that this is Councillor Cupp's first night out since her arrival, and I'm sure not only is there no place he would rather be, that whilst it may be some time before she can vote, it will be great to have a new party member. And I would also like to wish everyone, the leader, all councillors, officers and residents, a wonderful and restful Easter bank holiday weekend. I wasn't going to.
Thank you. No. Can I call upon the leader to respond, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Pugh, for your comments. Well, you know, you talk about council tax and the increase in council tax as if that was a surprise or something that might not have happened if there'd been a different administration. I think we're all well aware that the financial pressures the council works under obliges us to increase the council tax by the small amount that we're allowed to every year. And the fact that the situation is completely confused by our precept being such a small part, I note that it's almost been overtaken in some cases, in some areas of the district, by the precept from the Police and Crime Commissioner, who I believe is a Conservative. His bill goes up and up, and I don't think we hear very much about that. The reality is that councillor allowances have been frozen since 2012, and that wasn't a sensible situation, and there needed to be a correction to that, and the council agreed to do that. It's a relatively small amount of money in the council's overall budget, but I do think it's the right thing to do, and the council voted for it, and it wasn't just the Labour group that voted for it. In terms of the additional funding, yeah, I do think it's important that it's spent in the community, but we need to understand that the new money will be directed by representatives of the local community. So it's important that we listen to them and listen to the community what they've got to say. Well, none of us want to see significant amounts of money swallowed up by consultants, but the reality is that to deliver these schemes, the council has had to bring in outside help because it just isn't equipped to deal with the level of capital funding which has become available in recent years. But welcome as this money is, and I do welcome it, it doesn't replace the money that the district has lost in terms of the funding cuts since 2010, and he knows that very well. And I think that's what's had an effect on our communities. That's why people are struggling in our community. And it's good news we're getting something back, but it's not going to make up the difference. Yeah, opening time for the Winter Gardens. Well, as I said, the deadline that the funding is working towards is March 26. We clearly want to do that. We would clearly want to do things before that. In terms of the housing, I just repeat Councillor Pugh's line, it was not put to us. And, you know, my criticism of the Conservative administration was it sat there and waited for things to be put to them. It didn't come up with ideas of its own. And I think there's been a culture change in the last year. I think most people around the council understand that. This council goes out, this cabinet goes out and does things. It doesn't wait for things to be put to us. I think, oh yes, Western Undercliff, 2018 that was sold. Who was in charge?
Thank you. Councillor Gala, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the leader for as usual, for early sight of its report, and congratulations to Councillor Cupp on the birth of your daughter. I'm not going to dwell on the additional £20 million awarded to Ramsgate in the recent budget. All new money, as you say, coming our way is positive. And if any of it does actually materialise, I'm sure there are many small community-led projects across the town which would benefit greatly from this funding, and that would make a positive difference quickly. I'm also not going to dwell on the latest announcement on the now cancelled plans for a secure removal centre at Manston. The least said about the government's immoral and inhuman treatment of asylum seekers, the better. There are a couple of things in your report which I would like to dwell on though. One being the expansion of the council's affordable housing stock. To have secured the first 200 already in various stages of completion is certainly a positive step to be applauded. I think it's important though to be clear, as mentioned by Councillor Pugh, where the majority of these properties have come from. They are the affordable home allocations built on various development sites around the district, made available to the council to buy because for various reasons none of the housing associations that usually take them are either willing or able to do so. As I said, to have secured them as TDC council properties rather than losing them is welcome. We need more council properties, but I would be interested to know how many of the previously built affordable house allocations, pre-May 2023, were lost because there were no housing associations willing to take them on then. I assume we'll need to wait for the report detailing the last 4 years of Section 106 agreements promised in last October's council meeting to be published to find out. I think it's also worth remembering that these new council houses may be subject to the tenant's right to buy in the near future and so lost to the council. Let's hope that the new government to be elected later this year will, as a matter of urgency, abolish this policy that's been the root cause of many of the housing problems we are facing today. I'm pleased to hear about the wider canvas across the district that future awards from the Thanet lottery will be aimed at. As one of the aforementioned Broadstairs councillors, I of course welcome all funding that comes the way of the volunteer groups doing excellent work in our community. Engaging with and helping these groups to flourish is certainly something that our town council has made a good start on, and I'm sure the town and parish councils across the wider campus you mentioned, which include each of the villages, will be keen to work in partnership to help make sure these awards deliver the maximum positive benefit for the community. Keeping our streets clean is indeed a hot topic, and I know a number of us here have been busy recently joining our residents on litter picks as part of the Great Ramsgate Spring Clean or with the Broadstairs town team this morning around Piermont Park. I'm sure similar events have been organised in other parts of the district that many of us will be joining. So we look forward to the difference that the increased spending on cleansing and open spaces will make from next week when the new budget comes into effect, and are pleased that, among other things, our suggestion to increase fines for fly tipping to a maximum £1,000 is included. The recent briefing from the Council's Energy team was indeed excellent and well received. For us all to have so much valuable information about the homes in our ward and the grants that can be available to residents to help them improve their energy efficiency is a big step forward. Thank you to the officers who worked hard to put it all together, and I agree with you that it is now on all of us here to get the message out to our residents. Finally, regarding the proposal to lease the 8 concrete shelters in Ramsgate, I agree that this is worth exploring opportunities for their use going forward. I regularly pass them on my way to and from Ramsgate and often see that, especially in summer, homeless people sleep in 1 or 2 of them, and frequently see people photographing some of the often impressive community street art. They are also used as venues for the annual Festival of Sound, which attracts large numbers. If they are leased to anyone going forward, could you assure us that all of the above will be taken into consideration? Thank you.
I call upon the leader to respond.
Thank you for making that point, Councillor Garner, the last point. That's something we'll take back and talk to the property team about. But I think it is encouraging that there are 13 expressions of interest, particularly given the response that the original announcement received. And it is important that we allow the widest possible opportunity for people to take up these opportunities, and perhaps there will be others in future of a similar kind, who knows. The only thing I think I need to respond on is the right to buy. I mean, I think most of us recognise by now that the right to buy is a large part of the reason why we have such a major housing crisis in this country. I do recognise that people aspire to own their own homes, and that was why the policy was so successful in terms of providing for those people, but it has created a massive problem now because those homes weren't replaced. I think in terms of the properties that we're acquiring now, my understanding is that they can't be bought for 3 years, and that if they are, when they are bought, I think there's a floor price. We have to get back what we paid out for them. I think there's some controls in place. And I do pay tribute to Councillor Whitehead for her work on this, and I think the whole council recognises that. But that was what I meant when I said about having cabinet members who are very proactive in pushing housing policies, not particularly talking about this initiative, but we all know that Councillor Whitehead is totally engaged on the housing issue, and as she's talked before eloquently about the work that she's done in terms of the planning process, I think that's what we need from cabinet members, that's what we need from this council, and I'm really proud that we've got it in the Labour administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braywood was going to comment, but he's not here.
He's not here, Chair, and I haven't got anything to say. Thank you.
Agenda item 10, annual report of Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. I call upon Councillor Fellows to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. My full annual report has been circulated in this evening's agenda pack for members to read. Mr Chairman, in a change to previous practice, the Cabinet asked the Overview and Scrutiny Panel to review all key decisions prior to consideration by them. This has significantly increased the workload of the panel, and they required a number of additional extraordinary meetings to be called to accommodate this. This has increased the number of Overview and Scrutiny Panel meetings to mirror the number of Cabinet meetings for future years. So it's definitely been a busy period for the panel, with lots of key decisions recently coming forward to the panel and then on to Cabinet. There's been some lively scrutinising at times, and I'd like to thank the officers who came along and took part in the question and answer sections. I'm sure members feel more informed because the panel is doing more pre-decision scrutiny, and we look forward to continuing this work through the next year. I'd like to give special thanks to all the members of the scrutiny panel, especially my vice, for their hard work this year and also supporting me as chair, and also the officers from Democratic Services for their support too. Also, a thank you to the Cabinet members who came along and gave their presentations on subjects within their portfolios. I'm happy to take any questions and comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do councillors have any comments? I'll take that as a no. Agenda item 11, annual report from the Chair of Standards. I call upon Mr Tucker to present the report. Please make your way to a microphone.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you very much. Good evening, members, staff, officers. You've all seen the report that has been circulating in the pack you've all received today. I don't wish to make any further comment on it. I'll just point out to you, having listened tonight, I'm sure you'll all note that the social media policy is currently being reviewed, and that's all I can say on the matter, obviously. If any of you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do councillors have any comments? No. Agenda item 12, annual report of the Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee. I call upon W. Scobie to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. 9:15, trying to talk about governance and audit is challenging, so I'm sure I'll be rewarded for brevity here. But there are 2 points that I want to make. I agree with comments made by other chairs to thank all the members for their engagement and for the officers. We've had some really good discussions, and I think we've done some good work this year. There's 2 broader points I want to make, one that's in the report and one that I want to reference. Neither of them are suggestions of anything that's wrong, but just thoughts on how we might improve things in the future. The first is around the balance on committees between experienced and new members. When I looked at the membership of Governance and Audit, we had 15 of us and 12 of us were brand new to the council. And bearing in mind the serious governance issues the council had been through the previous 4 years and the number of challenges to the annual accounts, it has been quite a challenge. And quite a lot of brand new members have stepped into quite complicated topics and really got to grips with it. And my recommendation for the future is to group leaders is to try and balance that membership, because having so many new members means that there was threads of things that other people may have followed that we simply couldn't because we weren't around. So that's the first comment. The second one is around the rules of debate and the Constitution and how they apply to committees. There's been good discussion this evening, but it's been structured. There have been times that people can discuss, and there have been officers here to monitor and support those rules. The Constitution is not clear what happens at a committee. It states in one comment in the Constitution that the same rules that apply to council for how long you can talk and how many times you can talk apply to committees. But it would be ludicrous of us to try and enforce that, because we want on these committees to try and foster debate and for people to follow lines of questioning. But we do also need to balance that against individuals being able to dominate a debate and take something on a tangent. And I've been on a council before where there have been members that have done that. So my suggestion to Democratic Services as we go through the review of the Constitution is to make that a lot more clear, because it's very hard as a chair, other than sort of trying to feel the flow of debate, about how to deal with that. Very easy when it's a good, positive debate, but the rules should be there to understand what happens when things get more complicated. And if I, as chair, went to go and rely on those, there is nothing there. So I think that's something we need to look at when we do the constitutional review. But again, I want to reiterate my thanks to all the members of the committee and to Councillor Yates for attending and engaging in that. That's one of the things I think I'm really happy that we've changed, having a cabinet member there to listen to members' concerns around internal audit reports and some of the financial challenges we've got, I think has really helped to close the loop. But I'm happy to take any questions from anyone.
Do councillors have any comments? Agenda item 13, Budget Monitoring Report number 3, 2023/24. Could I please draw councillors' attention to the councillors' notes for this item, as there has been an additional recommendation. I call upon Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. The Council's constitution requires that supplementary budgets must be approved by Council. In other words, only Council can agree to the overall size of the budget for the year to be increased. The Quarter 3 Budget Monitoring Report was received by Cabinet on 29th of February 2024, within which Cabinet agreed for a number of additions to the budgets to be recommended to Council for approval. The link to this Budget Monitoring Report is included for reference under Annex to this report. I move the recommendation contained within the report are set out, and these are that Council approves the supplementary budgets for 1, the £275,000 requirement for the removal of waste at the Dane Park Depot, and that is funded from the risk reserve as set out in section 2.2 of the report, and 2, that Council approves the supplementary capital budgets numbered I to II inclusive as set out in section 3 to this report. In addition to the 2 recommendations included in the report, I move a further budget amendment for approval, as the Chair highlights tonight and shown in the paperwork in front of you tonight, as previously reported to Cabinet on the 14th of March 2024. This recommendation is for an additional £300,000 HRA capital budget to be approved for the Newington Community Centre for mechanical, electrical and plumbing items, which will significantly upgrade the energy efficiency of the building and lead to much lower operational costs for the centre in the long term. These improvements will also support the Council's transition to net zero across its asset portfolio. This is to be funded from the HRA Major Repairs Reserve. Thank you, Chair.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Alban. Do councillors agree? Thank you. Item Agenda 14, Contract Procedure Rules. I move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Do councillors agree? Agenda item 15, Councillor / Officers Protocol. I move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chair second?
Seconded.
Do councillors agree? Right, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I just want to add one comment, and apologies to those who are on constitutional review or on standards for repeating this. But building on Councillor Whitehead's motion before, I think this is a really, really positive change, but we also need to, I was going to make this point during the debate before, but it was a very positive debate and lots of people already added in. But there is the elephant in the room, or the elephant not in the room, where there are councillors who, if they decide to not follow the rules and decide to do what they want, there are very few consequences. And one of the things that's happened in the last 15 years with the changes to standards and the removal of some of the powers to actually do anything about that has led to a situation where all of us can sign up to these rules, all of us can sign up to the principle that Councillor Whitehead put forward, but if one person doesn't, there's nothing we can do about it. I raise this point because I think sometimes this may get missed, but I hope that a future government will look at this again and bring back some kind of sanctions for it, because I just think it's totally inappropriate that you have a system where if it's broken, there are no consequences of any note. So I wanted to add that comment, Chair.
Anybody else want to make a comment? No? Right. Do councillors agree? Agree. Thank you. Item Agenda 16, Revised Constitutional Changes Progress. I move that the recommendations as set out in the report are adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
I second.
Does anybody want to debate it? Councillors agree? Thank you. Changes to committees at agenda item 17. The leader of the council has informed me the Democratic Service he wishes to add Councillor Joanne Bright to the list of governance and audit substitutes. Councillor Garner has informed Democratic Services that he will replace Councillor Austin as a group. Right. So that's Councillor Green represented on the Standards Committee. Group leaders may take the opportunity to advise of changes to the nominations to committees, panels, boards of the remainder of 24-25. Don't you want to add something to your cabinet?
No, Chair. I was more intrigued with what was going to happen to Councillor Austin, to be fair. We heard that Councillor Garner was going to replace her, but we didn't hear. Was that you going to the pub, Councillor Austin? I might join you, to be fair. That was all. But no changes from us.
Right, thank you. Right, agenda item 18, amendment to the calendar of meetings 24 to 27. I move that the recommendations as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chair second?
I second.
Do councillors agree? You don't want to debate it? No? Right. Chief Executive would like to get out. But
You're not going to turn into Councillor Austin, are you?
I'm going to try and find it. Right. So this is item 19, appointment of interim chief executive and head of paid services. Right. I call upon the leader.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's a bit unfortunate that Mr Carmichael has to leave in a way, because I think that one thing that we are pretty united on as a council is the good job that he's done for this council in the time that he's been here, and I'm quite happy to give the Conservative administration and Ash Ashby, who brought him in, the credit for bringing him in. You know, I have no compunction about that, and I think, as you're aware, Colin was employed on an interim basis. We previously decided to extend his contract last July. I don't think there was any doubt about that, but because of the structure of council meetings, and we don't have an ordinary council meeting between March and July, it all ended up being a bit last minute, which was not very satisfactory. So I spoke to Colin immediately after the Christmas break to sound him out on whether he was prepared to stay with us for another year. I think it'd be fair for me to say that he enjoys being here as much as we value the work that he's doing. And I was very pleased to be told by him that he got permission from his wife to extend his tenure. And I did make the point of having an informal discussion with Councillor Pugh and Councillor Garner, because I think that it's important to check that is the view across the council, but I was always very confident that it was. So the recommendation has gone through the General Purposes Committee, a very interesting General Purposes Committee, which was interrupted by a fire alarm, something which I've, we talk about at every council meeting I've ever been to, but never actually experienced one. But there you go, that was a first. But we did manage to make the recommendation to Council. So I am moving that Council agrees to extend the appointment of Colin Carmichael as Interim Chief Executive, Head of Paid Service and Returning Officer for a further year until the 31st of July 2025. And it notes that the appointment panel, which consists of Councillor Pugh, Councillor Whitehead and myself, has the responsibility of determining the timing and process of the appointment of a permanent Chief Executive in due course. Thank you.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Pugh? Do you want to debate it in the usual way? Yes?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate a lot of what Councillor Everett has said. I think we're incredibly lucky to have Mr Carmichael as our Interim Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service. I thank Councillor Everett for the kind words of what the former leader of this council, Ash Ashby, did, and the Conservative administration to bring Mr Carmichael in. I don't want to ruin what has been a very lovely full council meeting by going into the reasons why that happened, but it's great to have him for another year. I do think that we do, sooner rather than later, doesn't mean I don't like Mr Carmichael, we do need to begin the process for finding a long-lasting, hopefully, Chief Executive, and I'm sure that Mrs Carmichael's patience won't last forever. But thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak? Right, do councillors agree? Agree. Thank you. That's the business for the council. Thank you.